Europe has been in crisis for the last few years. On the surface, it has been a crisis about money, about bailouts, about unemployment, about social problems. Fundamentally, however, it has been a problem, it has been a crisis of ideas. We've seen people in the last few years taking to the streets, protesting, voicing their concerns and ideas. We've seen journalists writing, proposing solutions. We've seen organizations campaigning for change. The gap between them and the politicians, however, keeps getting bigger. I said we're facing a crisis of ideas because valuable ideas are those ideas that are being exchanged with the political decision makers. It's not enough just to communicate them. It's paradoxical to talk about a communication breakdown in the age of the internet and of social media. Billions of tweets are sent monthly. Billions of posts with images and text are being posted monthly on Facebook. The problem here is this. This is an image that was publicized by a very famous photographer to illustrate what he called the death of personal communication. This is offline. Let's see what happens online. Actually, 7% of communication on social media is interaction between politicians and citizens. The rest is positioning, which is sending links. The rest is self-description, which is politicians talking about their ideas and their plans. This is fantastic because it enables the citizens to know better what their politicians are doing. But this is not interaction. This is broadcasting. This is why we created GovFaces, which is the social media platform for meaningful communication between citizens and their decision makers. Let's see how GovFaces works. Every politician has a public profile, just like Facebook and Twitter. The difference is that on GovFaces, they cannot post anything. It's the citizens that post questions and comments on the platform. Then the community decides, through that system there of up and down voting, which questions and comments are the most relevant and which deserve an answer the first. This means that a politician, within the first 3 seconds of logging in on their profile, knows exactly which question is the most important for their community, and they know which questions deserves an answer the first. The answer comes through text, but also video, which makes for direct communication. What then happens is that citizens can comment on the politician answer, and this is how we create interaction.
So we launched GovFaces for the first time in March of this year at the European Parliament and Commission. You can see, Tudor pointed out, Mr. Liberadzki and Mr. Tarabella, a Belgian member of European Parliament and a Polish member of European Parliament. In fact, they were 2 of almost 100 politicians that used our platform in the first 3 months alone. These were elected members of European Parliament, commissioners, and even candidates that were sometimes running against the politicians that we had on our platform. In the end, we found that GovFaces empowered people to talk about the issues that were most important to them on both an online and an offline way. Online, the politicians who used our platform, such as this one, a Finnish MEP named Sirpa Pietikäinen. Anyone from Finland here? All right, cool, we have a Finnish crowd. A Finnish MEP was one of the first members of European Parliament to use our platform. She shared her interaction and advocated for citizen interaction, even using existing social media like Facebook and Twitter, reaching thousands of people and bringing them into the conversation. Additionally, journalists use our platform too. We made a strong effort to include writers and publishers in what we were doing. This journalist, Franck Guillory from France, is interacting with a Belgian politician asking about the main issues on the election. The MEP gave a very long text response, though usually the MEP would respond by video. And the next day, this article came up. A journalist had interviewed that MEP on GovFaces publicly for everyone to see, and then wrote an article about it the next day. Then we were stunned to find this. The offline developed without us. What we realized was we needed an offline component to make the maximum social impact that we could. We were going to do it, but it happened without us. A member of European Parliament from Italy named Franco Frigo held a public meeting in his constituency in Treviso, just by Venice. And he invited hundreds of students, community members, academics, organizations to come join him. He activated his GovFaces profile and he accepted questions for 2 weeks prior to this event. When everybody showed up, he singled them out in the audience and he said, "I loved your question you asked me 2 weeks ago. Here's what my office is doing to impact this community." He answered the top questions on his GovFaces profile and then interacted with people in person. We created a link between the online and the offline. In addition, we were able to bring the message of citizen interaction with politics all across the continent. We spoke with students in Bulgaria, in Switzerland, in France, in England about how they could communicate their ideas on complex political topics like environment or recycling to the decision makers that mattered. We presented to young professionals in Brussels who had ideas on how to improve the functioning of the European institutions and how they could actually communicate these ideas to people with the power to implement solutions. But it wasn't just us. Over the 3 months that we had this platform active at the European Union, a network developed of over 100 volunteers in over 15 countries in Europe that voluntarily spoke at universities, schools. They went to media events. They spoke at international events, saying there's a new way. They went and they found the most interesting ideas in their community, such as a trash collection app or a platform to reduce youth unemployment. And they said, let's institutionalize this. And they worked with innovators in their community to communicate those projects to politicians. The idea of GovFaces and the long-term goal is to have a global platform. We imagine citizens interacting with the city council about how to better use a park, or with a mayor on how urban planning should include input from society, or even with a prime minister on immigration or the environment. But in order to go global, 2 things need to happen. First, we need to prove that this can work in multiple countries at the same time. We were able to do this at the European Union. Our politicians came from 18 different EU member states. Second, we need to prove how this works at the national level. So in 2015, we'll be launching a platform in the United Kingdom where we're going to go into constituencies, create ideal ecosystems of journalists and citizens interacting with their politician. Last, I want to leave you with one of our inspiring quotes. It's by a role model of ours, which says that 10 years from now, we will look back on now, on 2014, and we will wonder, how was it that we communicated with our politicians regularly? We sent emails, but we got form responses. We tweeted them, but they don't answer. We'll look back on now and we'll wonder how we communicated. In 10 years from now, someone will figure this out. If it's our platform, I'll be the happiest guy about it. But whether or not it is, someone from our generation will figure this out. It will be the youth that will come up with a platform on how to interact better, how to empower new ideas, and how to make our own difference in society. Thank you very much.
I have one fear. That you will become a politician before you succeed. And that you will be elected to Prime Minister's office in many different kind of countries. Now, GovFaces turns broadcast social media into active social media. Any questions? There are 3 questions, 1, 2, 3, and we start here with me.
Yeah, hi. I will just, first of all, I'm going to, thank you. I mean, that was a very superior presentation, especially because, well, I'm coming from Indonesia, and actually I'm very involved in the past election of the new president, of the newly elected president, and yeah, this is exactly like what we are trying to do in Indonesia in a mass scale as well, but. We find out that actually it works quite well with Twitter as well. You maybe know that Indonesia is actually the largest Twitter user in the world. There is more tweets coming from Jakarta than any other country in one day. and the politicians are using this, and it was like everywhere in the international media that this is the very first social media election in the world. So like my question is that why would politicians choose your application more than they choose Twitter? Because Twitter, of course, has a much more bigger mass already at the moment inside.
Sure.
Yes, go ahead.
I would.
Short and sweet.
Yes, the Indonesian election was fascinating. It was a social media election. What we saw were the two candidates took two different approaches. One was a very decentralized approach, using hundreds of volunteers throughout the countryside to interact with people who asked questions on social media. The other actually hired 75 people full-time, all around the clock, to provide an answer to everything on Twitter in 15 minutes. In the end, in retrospect, both of these strategies were great, but fell short because of the limits on those platforms. Most politicians in the world cannot hire 75 people to do full-time social media response. And when you hire volunteers to speak to people for you, it creates somewhat of an impersonal, tailored response, but not directly from you. Our idea is allow the community to decide what gets to the top of the politician profile. So when they answer one question with a direct video from their cell phone, they could answer hundreds or thousands, or in the case of a president or prime minister, millions of citizens, all with one answer. So rather than quantity of answers, quality going to as many people as possible and touching them on an intellectual and social level, all with one response.
Okay, second Prime Minister speech, very good. Okay, Olga. Oh, I mean, we have already marketing champions, Honest Joseph, and other things.
I also loved your passionate speech. This is very convincing what you're saying here. And I wanted to ask you, how do you measure your impact, apart from saying how many politicians are there, how many tweets or questions are there? So what are the criteria of your success? Are there any actual changes that have taken place in communities? Some children playgrounds were built, if you're talking about local level or on the national level. Thank you.
The nice thing about our platform is that it's not only a social media tool. We see it as a social phenomenon. At the beginning, I joined, I think the personal story is quite interesting. I joined GovFaces when we were thinking how to market the platform. And I told the guys that the social value of what we're doing is high enough for us to just open up to the youth. And that's what we did. We had more than 100 volunteers who campaigned for this platform because they believed in the idea. This is the biggest impact that we can have. People getting together over different cultures for this, to campaign for solving this need, for bringing politicians closer to citizens and the other way around. This is how we measure the impact.
Thank you. And I have a last question. What's the business model?
Currently, it's supported by private investment, so there are no revenue streams currently on the platform. At a later time, we're going to implement revenue models that do not include advertising or taking of personal data. We have some data specialists on our team. We're very much into personal privacy. Our model of revenue will be similar to LinkedIn at the beginning, so users can upgrade their profile to see additional insights into how interaction is going on, especially for politicians who are in campaigns that want to know how to tailor a message for a specific part of their constituency. At the beginning, this is going to be how it's going.
Thank you very much. This was GovFaces, Connor Satterley and Tudor Michalescu. Thank you very much.